Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Social Justice Assembly. Your peer ministers have been working very hard to put together a presentation that will help you better understand what it is we mean when we say to you at the end of every day,
Bullseyes, go be builders of a more just society.
It's good to remember that I'm a high school campus minister, not a video editor. So keeping this in mind, we hope that you enjoy our 2-hour and 40-minute that was before editing. We hope that you enjoy our 1 hour and 20-minute, that was after 2 days of editing. We hope that you enjoy our 35-minute presentation on social justice and how Catholics work to create justice in our world. Teachers, keep in mind that any point throughout this presentation, you can stop the video to have discussions with your class. We hope that you enjoy and learn a lot about justice. Thank you.
Welcome to the Social Justice Assembly 2021. Today we're going to present Justice in the Catholic Church, presented by Milo, Cooper, and Eileen. Let's take a moment to try and understand how, as Catholics, we are guided to think about justice.
If you were a praying mantis, it would be socially acceptable to devour your mate.
And if you're a honey badger, you have no regard for other animals. You don't care.
If you're a panda with twins, it's normal to abandon one to take care of the other.
But if humans do any of these things, we would call it wrong, unfair, or unjust.
Yeah, why is that? Why do humans care so much about justice?
Well, the Bible has a fascinating response to that question. On page 1, humans are set apart from all other creatures as the image of God.
Yeah, God's representatives who rule the world by his definition of good and evil.
And this identity, it's the bedrock of the Bible's view of justice. All humans are equal before God and have the right to be treated with dignity and fairness no matter who you are.
And that would be nice if we all did that. But we know how the world really works.
And the Bible addresses that too. It shows how we are constantly redefining good and evil to our own advantage at the expense of others.
Yeah, self-preservation. And the weaker someone is, the easier it is to take advantage of them.
And so in the biblical story, we see this happening on a personal level, but also in families, and then in communities, and in whole civilizations that create injustice, especially towards the vulnerable. But the story doesn't end there. This word justice, it's the Hebrew word mishpat. It can refer to retributive justice.
Like if I steal something, I pay the consequences.
Exactly. Yet most often in the Bible, mishpat refers to restorative justice. It means going a step further, actually seeking out vulnerable people who are being taken advantage of and helping them.
Yeah, some people call this charity.
But mishpat involves way more. It means taking steps to advocate for the vulnerable and changing social structures to prevent injustice.
So justice and righteousness are about a radical, selfless way of life.
Yeah, and you find this idea all over the Bible. Like here, in the book of Proverbs, what does it mean to bring about just righteousness?
Open your mouth for those who can't speak for themselves.
And what do these words mean for the prophets, like Jeremiah?
Rescue the disadvantaged, and don't tolerate oppression or violence against the immigrant, the orphan, and the widow.
And like here, look in the book of Psalms.
The Lord God upholds justice for the oppressed, gives food to the hungry, and sets the prisoner free.
All of these quotes from the Bible were written a long time ago, but we continue to hear the same information and messaging from Pope Francis today. He said, "There's no such thing as low-cost Christianity. Following Jesus means swimming against the tide, renouncing evil and selfishness."
The only reasonable response is to go and seek righteousness and justice for others.
This is a radical way of life, and it's not always convenient or easy. It's courageously making other people's problems my problems.
This is what Jesus meant by loving your neighbor as yourself. It's about a lifetime commitment fueled by the words of the ancient prophet Micah. God has told you, humans, what is good, and what the Lord requires of you is to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God.
From the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. In Catholicism, the original meaning of justice was something along the lines of when you are in good standing with God, with one another, and with all of God's creations, justice also being one of the gifts of the Holy Spirit. With people's selfish desires, however, this view of justice, especially in legal justice as we know it, has been twisted every which way in order to suit whoever has the power to do so.
We have examples of people in the past who have identified injustice and actively worked against it, like Dorothy Day. In order for us to be builders of a more just society, we are called to be aware, to be active, and to look for ways close to us where we can work for justice. She put it this way:
The greatest challenge of the day is how to bring about a revolution of the heart, a revolution which has to start with each of us. Dorothy Day.
It is not always easy for us to see or feel that change of heart or to be actively working against injustice. We found this ad by Nike with an interesting twist to their Just Do It ads that speaks to this.
To end, we have a challenge for you. We challenge you to consider this question every week or even every day. What have I done to combat injustice and racism? Thank you.
Yeah, start us off.
In the first video, charity and justice were mentioned. This is Sam, and along with Annette and Grace, we would like to take a few minutes to talk about charity versus justice.
Before we start talking about charity and justice, we would like you each to take a moment to think about both of these words and write in the chat box your definition of charity and justice. Teachers, please press pause here, and if necessary, stop screen sharing so that students in your class can write and see what is written in the chat box. Feel free to read some of the given definitions out loud. When you are done, share your screen again and press play.
So today, our goal is to help you distinguish the difference between the two, because I know right now it probably seems kind of hard.
Think about it this way. Say you go for a walk by the river and you find someone drowning. You decide to dive into the water to save them. In doing so, you have spent your time alleviating the effects of a painful outcome for someone. This is charity. But say this begins to happen a lot and you find yourself diving in the river 4 or 5 times a week to save someone. You begin to ask yourself, why are there so many people falling in the river that need saving? And what can I do to stop it from happening in the future? In doing so, you have spent your time alleviating the causes of a painful outcome for someone else. This is justice.
I don't know about you, but the way of thinking about charity and justice makes sense to me. As Catholics, we are called to be charitable. How can we be charitable? The Catholic Church teaches us that we can do this through the corporal works of mercy. These are charitable actions by which we help our neighbors in their bodily needs. Charitable actions respond to the basic needs of humanity as we journey together through this life.
Here are the corporal works of mercy. Feed the hungry, give drink to the thirsty, give to the poor, shelter the homeless, visit the sick, visit the imprisoned, bury the dead, and care for creation.
Keeping the idea of charity and the corporal works of mercy in mind, let's take a moment to watch a video we watched last year. Some of you may remember it.
เขาจะได้อะไรถ้าเขาทำแบบนี้ทุกวัน เขาจะไม่ได้อะไรเลย ไม่ได้รวยขึ้น ไม่ได้ออกทีวี ไม่มีใครรู้จัก ไม่ได้มีชื่อเสียงที่มากขึ้น เพราะสิ่งที่เขาได้คือได้แค่ความรู้สึกได้เห็นความสุขได้เข้าใจได้ความรักได้ในสิ่งที่เงินซื้อไม่ได้ได้โลกที่สวยงามกว่าเดิมในชีวิตคุณอะไรคือสิ่งที่คุณต้องการมากที่สุด
This man was doing charitable works of mercy. In this video, can you think of a way where this man, through being charitable, was able to build a more just society? Sometimes charity may lead to justice, but often working for justice can be difficult and bring about anger and protest.
Everyone's fine with a nun handing out bread or a priest blessing the sick, but when someone begins talking about structures of sin or systems of injustice, eyebrows begin to rise.
As Cardinal Dom Helder Câmara, former Brazilian archbishop, once said, "When I give to the poor, they call me a saint. When I ask why they are poor, they call me a communist."
Even though working for justice and looking for the root causes of injustice can be faced with adversity, we still challenge you to do this. You hear us say to you at the end of every school day,
Bulldogs, go be builders of a more just society.
Creating a just society and what that means can be a very controversial issue. Isaac, Owen, and Max are going to share with us where those controversies lie.
Social justice as a controversial issue.
How does this picture resonate with you all? What are the first thoughts that come to your head when you see it? Do you understand what message is being promoted here? Take a moment to think about it. And here's another picture which represents a different perspective on social justice. Do you like this picture more than the last, or do you disagree with it? Pause the video and talk amongst yourselves for a few moments about what you think.
Hopefully, you were able to talk about the differences in these two images. Differing ideas about what justice is, or what social justice is, can make it difficult to talk about.
The most common talking points from the opposite sides of the social justice issue can often be boiled down to collectivism versus individualism. Although these are very broad terms, they can be used to simply explain why each side feels so passionate about the issue. These next two videos, like the two images shown previously, offer opposing viewpoints on the issue of social justice. Keep in mind what we have talked about so far when watching.
Social justice viewpoint number 1. Justly taking from the haves and giving to the have-nots.
Social justice is about the state amassing ever-increasing power in order to do good things. What are good things? Well, whatever the champions of social justice decide this week. But first, last, and always, it is the cause of economic redistribution. According to the doctrine of social justice, the haves always have too much, and the have-nots never have enough.
Social justice viewpoint number 2. The Catholic perspective on justice. Dealing with the causes that bring about painful outcomes.
When we say justice, we're not talking about lawyers and judges. We're not talking about doling out punishments. We're talking about the very biblical notion of giving each one what is rightfully due to them.
The whole point about justice is, biblically speaking, it's about living in right relationship with God, with one another, and with creation. It seems to me the whole point of justice is to deal not just with the effects or the outcomes of a situation, but to try to remedy and deal with the causes that bring about painful outcomes or consequences.
Social justice viewpoint number 3, justice versus social justice, as punishment for wrongdoing or not.
We're going to be in a much better position to do justice when we stop focusing so much on the perversion that's known as social justice. Social justice stands in direct contravention and opposition to justice. Justice is about you take action, you get what you deserve. Social justice is about you take action, and we may or may not give you what you deserve based on what we think your social group deserves.
Justice as equity, not equality.
Take 3 neighborhoods. Each one is situated across from the grocery store. One has no transportation system, and the streets aren't safe at night. One needs a boat to get there, and one is positioned a block away. Equality says, we hand them all boots and tell them to make do. One-size-fits-all solutions for problems that require more than one resolution. But equity, the quality of being fair and impartial, speaks to access. Equity speaks to safety. Equity speaks to transportation. Equity speaks to understanding. Equity speaks to the actual human condition.
Unfortunately, these issues have grown so complex to the point to where it is downright frustrating, especially with the harsh rhetoric employed by all parties involved. This rhetoric has led to an extremely toxic stigma surrounding social justice, which has made it harder for us to come together to solve problems. However, I want you all to think for a second. Does this really matter? Are our differences so great that we can't come together? It's important to remember that at the end of the day, we all want the same thing, a better future for everybody. Although many of us disagree on the best way to achieve this future, almost all of us are in our hearts good people, and we want change for everybody.
How does the Catholic Church view social justice? Catholics believe everyone is created equal through the image of God. Catholics believe justice was a gift given to humanity. As Catholics, we come to the realization that those words have not been lived up to, not just in America, but all throughout the world.
In the modern era, popes have written what are called social encyclicals, letters meant to be read by the whole church as a guide for building a just society based on the current issues. It is from these letters, built on the foundation of scripture and tradition, that we are guided by 7 general principles of social teaching. We are called to care for God's creation, that which was created before us and we are a part of, to protect the life and dignity of the human person, to be active members of family and community, the building blocks of society, to uphold the rights and responsibilities of all people, but especially those who are poor, for which we have a preferential option, and those who are workers, all the while remembering that we are all in this together, in solidarity with all the people around the world.
We want you all to challenge yourself, both in the coming weeks, as well as for the remainder of this assembly, to keep an open mind about the issues we discussed. We want you all to remember the importance of leaving your biases behind, as well as the importance of recognizing the dignity and good intentions of those you may disagree with. Not only will this be helpful in the conversation on social justice, but in virtually every other aspect of your life as well.
Okay, hey guys, here's another social justice presentation by European ministers Lorenzo, Carson, and Cece. Our topic is our call to action and issues of justice. Here are some social justice issues that we are currently dealing with in today's world. These are racial inequality, voting rights, income gap, healthcare, and cyberbullying. These are just a few among the many social injustices that people are dealing with.
Here's a video from a TED Talk by Alexa Chikuma about how we as people can act on social injustices within our communities.
So here's how you can change the world around you. Ask yourself,
What is it that you're passionate about? Or what social problem fuels you with rage, and how can you channel that rage towards something good? Next, read all that you can about the topic, because I believe that knowledge is power. And once we have the passion and the knowledge, we're already halfway there. You don't need to reinvent the wheel or to found your own NGO. Instead, you can find organizations that are in line with your values and care deeply about this issue you share. Lend your voice, donate to these causes, sacrifice your time. We must be relentless in this pursuit of change we seek in our world. Our activism should not start and end on the internet. Ask yourself, what would you do if you could do anything and you knew you wouldn't fail? What is your vision for our future, and how are you going to contribute to creating that future? I believe that we ought to be the change that we wish to see. Thank you.
Now please pause and have each person in your AC write a response in your Zoom chat about one of the 3 discussion questions we have listed. After you are done writing, please discuss amongst your ACs about your responses. Once you are done, you may resume.
Okay guys, here's a story for you. It's a little bit more of a parable than a personal story. It's a story.
One day, a man was walking along the beach when he noticed a boy picking up starfish and throwing them into the ocean. Approaching the boy, he asked, "Excuse me, but what are you doing?" The boy replied, "Throwing starfish back into the ocean. The sun is rising and the tide is going out. If I don't throw them back, they'll die." The man laughed to himself and said, "But there's too many starfish on this beach. You can't possibly make a difference." After listening politely, the boy bent down, picked up another starfish, and threw it into the ocean. Then turning to the man, he said, "I made a difference to that one."
This modern parable reminds us that change does not come easy, fast, or by ourselves. We don't have to save the world, just make the difference to the people around us.
We have thought of one specific way that we at Judge can make a difference to the people around us. Cyberbullying is here, even at Judge, and we have the power to do something about it. Before we talk about what we can do, watch this video clip depicting what it may feel like when you are the target of unfriendly comments on social media. Working to create a more just society means we stand up to things like cyberbullying when we see it.
When I hear about this happening to students, especially students that I love and care about, I'm heartbroken and frustrated. Let's face it, I'm not very technologically savvy. I don't have a Twitter account. I maybe have 5 followers on Instagram. So if this type of bullying is happening to students, it's very unlikely that I or my colleagues are going to find out about it. But this is not the case for each of you.
We challenge all of you to start standing up to this type of injustice now. What can you do?
Talk. Talk to your friend and tell them that they do not deserve to be mistreated. Remind them that cyberbullying is not okay. If you have participated in the bullying or ignored it, apologize.
Encourage. Reassure your friend that you will stand by them. Don't give in to the peer pressure to join in the bullying or ignore the situation.
Tell.
The two of you should not have to handle this situation alone. Your friend may protest or be afraid, but getting a trusted adult involved will help you and your friend get support and protection.
Be a friend. Frequently, people on the receiving end of harmful social media posts believe no one wants to be their friend. This is where you make the difference and be a friend.
If you take nothing else away from this presentation, take this one concrete thing that you can do. If you see hurtful or unkind things being posted about someone, immediately post 2 or more good things right then and there. If everyone did that, the recipient would read more good, loving things about themselves than hurtful ones. Remember, the bad things we read about ourselves make us feel like we are alone and have no friends. The next thing you do after posting good comments is to go and be a friend.
One of the issues of justice that is in the forefront of the news in the US lately is racism. We are going to take a few minutes to talk about the issues revolving around race here in the United States.
My name is Bella.
My name is Jade.
And I'm Lily. How much do you know about issues surrounding racism in the USA? A black person is blank more likely to be stopped without just cause than a white person. I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. A black person is 5 times more likely to be stopped without a just cause than a white person. Black people seeking testing or treatment for COVID-19 were blank times more likely to be turned away than whites. Black people seeking testing or treatment for COVID-19 were 6 times more likely to be turned away than whites.
This is a video talking about systemic racism.
Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. You know, if you're like most Americans, you probably say to yourself all the time, systemic racism, is that really a thing? Well, did you know that back in the 1980s, there were less than 500,000 people in the US prison system, but now, thanks to the war on drugs, there are more than 2 million? Did you know that out of every 100,000 Americans, about 700 are incarcerated, but out of every 100,000 black men, over 4,000 are incarcerated? And that one of the many effects of that trend is, combined with felony disenfranchisement laws, it means that 13% of black American men are denied the right to vote? Did you know that? Do you know what that's called? That's called systemic racism. And yes, it's really a thing. Did you know that in 2010, black Americans made up 13% of the population, but only had 2.7% of the country's wealth? That the median net worth for a white family was $134,000, but the median net worth for a Hispanic family was $14,000, and for black Americans it was $11,000? You know, that's called systemic racism. And yes, it's really a thing.
Why does racism occur? From a Catholic standpoint, racism occurs because we forget that people are all equally made in the image of God. We are unable to see our common origin, and we are unable to see past one another's physical features and realize that we are all just simply human. This leads to prejudicial behavior and racism. When people fail to stand up against racism, they are contributing to the problem, and that's why racism continues to be present in our country.
Look, we know racism is out there. It is not a good thing, and we are called to actively work against it, helping to create a more just society.
So our challenge to you is to challenge yourself. Reflect on what you are doing for others and think about how you are contributing to the community. Are you doing your part in trying to end racism? We'll leave you with this quote from Martin Luther King Jr. to reflect on. Life's most urgent question is, what are you doing for others?
Hi everyone, we're your peer ministers. I'm Jaylene Gomez, this is Shuang Wu, and Chris Liu, who is joining us from China.
Today we're going to talk about our first step in working against racism through 3 ways: listen, honor, and connect.
Here are 2 quotes from the Open Wide Our Hearts. To do justice requires an honest acknowledgement of our failures and the restoring of right relationships between us. It requires a determined effort, but even more so, it requires humility. It requires each of us to ask for the grace needed to overcome this sin and to get rid of this scourge.
Here's a video about how can we combat racism in our daily life.
one of the compliments that I will receive is, oh, you're not like most Black people.
A lot of times people will be like, oh, she's really pretty for an Asian, or you're really pretty for an Asian.
The entire background of that statement is extremely racist because it insinuates that I do not think Asian people are good looking in general.
People tend to want to shy away from talking about race, but it's actually healthy if we do, even if we disagree.
I feel like so much about race is just the perspective of putting yourself in the other person's shoes.
So if you decide to start a sentence with, I don't mean to be racist, or I'm not racist, but don't ever do that, because you will look racist and you will sound racist. Anytime you have to qualify a statement with the explanation of why it's not something, it probably is that something.
I have before told my friends, like, hey, it makes me like kind of uncomfortable when you say things like this. And if they're really your friends, like, they're gonna take that into consideration.
It's definitely more visible online and it's more in your face because people are able to hide behind a username.
On this YouTube video, there will be terrible comments, and I hope that you either downvote them or you say something like, that's not cool. You can either ask if something offended somebody, or you can tell somebody that something that they said offended you.
It would be great if everyone had the balls to go up to someone to say, hey, you know what, that kind of was like uncalled for, or that was really offensive.
We can't not talk about race. That's the worst thing that we could do. Being colorblind isn't gonna help anybody.
Don't treat it like it's something that's sacred. Just talk about it.
Here are some comments that we found under that video. There were thousands of comments there just like this, where people were sharing their experiences and opening up dialogues and having friendly conversations about their issues.
Here at Judge, what can we do to justly stand up to racism? It may be more simple than you think. We can do that with 3 simple steps.
Step 1. Listen. Take the time to sit and listen to a friend or someone new, especially about parts of their life that are different from yours. Listening is a way to show that you care. Listening is loving.
Step 2. Honor what you are being told. Every person's life experiences have value. Acknowledging and try to understand their experiences instead of invalidating them lets them know you value them and their experiences, even if you do not fully understand them.
Step 3. Find a way to connect with a friend or someone new and the experience they shared with you. Once you listen to a friend and they know you value what has been shared, the final step is to find a way to build a connection. This is where community strengths begin.
Please take a moment to reflect on this prompt. Have you ever experienced or witnessed an act of racism? Consider how you might help and uplift the voice of others who have been on the receiving end of one such act, using what you have learned today.
Now we're going to ask that your teacher pause this video and start to play again when you have finished your conversation. Now is what we were going to call our challenge to you. We want you to take what you learned today and to go out and listen to people when they bring up issues that directly affect them, and to try and support them in any way you can, and to try and help open up new dialogues. Thank you.
How do we work to build a more just society?
Please pause and discuss these questions with your students. If you don't want to talk, typing in the chat box is encouraged. What ways have you seen others build a more just society, and what ways do you build a more just society?
We asked some Judge students how they work to build a more just society, and these were their responses.
Liliana Anderson said, "We work to build a more just society by putting ourselves out there in any situation and prioritizing our community." Matthew Ludlow said, "I think we build a more just society through our service that we do, such as service hours or gift of the drummer, but also in how we work with ourselves and help each other out. If we see that someone is struggling on an assignment or needs some help, we'll go out of our way to help them.
Izzy Fayez said, many Judge students are working to educate themselves on political issues in order to build a more just society and to create the future they wish to be a part of. JMCHS students speak up and use their voices to express what they feel is right and just. Seth Overman said, we constantly strive to shed light on all situations and provide help to all who need it. Han Nguyen said, I think we help to build a more just society by staying educated on the important topics in our community and supporting each other.
Nori Lani said, when we do service hours, it is helping us know that there are people that need help and learning how to make our world a better place / bringing more equality. Andrew Hall said, I think JMCHS students work to build a more just society through community service. JMCHS students also work to educate each other through organizations such as BSU and the Allies Club.
Hopefully some of those answers were some you heard when you discussed the questions at the beginning. Now we are going to watch a short video on why some lawyers fight for justice.
Lawyers are liars.
Greedy.
Cynical.
Ambulance chasers.
Sharks. Aggressive. Lawyers do it all for the money.
So why'd you want to be a lawyer?
I wanted to be a lawyer because when I was 5 years old, my father was incarcerated.
Seeing the police set dogs on little black children and fire hoses.
I walked into an immigration detention facility. I saw people in desperate need.
I figured out that I could fight for teachers and that I was pretty good at it.
I remember thinking and saying to my parents, as a matter of fact, I want to be a lawyer because lawyers make all the difference.
Justice doesn't grow on trees and sort of fall out of the sky.
It is always fragile and it is always evolving.
It doesn't come tied up in a neat ribbon. Justice is what you do.
It's the presence of dignity and empowerment.
To have food, to have clean water, to have education.
There's a lot of injustice and there's a lot of people out there who are not trying to do the just thing.
It's our job to remedy that as lawyers.
We challenge you to go out into your community and see what you can do to build a more just society, whether it is by doing something small like holding the door for someone or waving as you pass a stranger in the hall. It doesn't have to be a big thing as long as you're reaching out.
It seems appropriate that even though you have heard this twice today already, and you will continue to hear it every day over the loudspeaker at the end of each day, that we conclude with
Bulldogs, go be builders of a more just society.
Thank you for joining us today. Before we end, I'd like to give some students from Judge the opportunity to share with you a way that you can work towards justice in the world.
We are all ambassadors for an organization called Molly Rising.
Molly Rising Foundation envisions a quality middle school education within walking distance for every child in Molly's rural villages. Their mission is to empower the children of Molly and improve educational opportunities for them within their own villages.
This education empowers children to go on to futures that not only improve their own lives, but also the fate of their villages and of Molly as a whole.
Molly Rising is currently hosting a Speech Up competition. Molly believes that young people can change the world. Speech Up contest gives students a platform to share their ideas to make changes across the world. High school students are given the opportunity to share their responses to the prompt presented. The best, most persuasive, creative responses win a prize and publicity online.
This year's prompt is the UN Sustainable Development Goal 4.1 states, by 2030 ensure that all girls and boys complete free, equitable, and quality primary and secondary education leading to relevant and effective learning outcomes. What are the 3 most critical changes to the status quo you would propose to help achieve that goal in low-income countries like Molly?
There are awards, and you can also get service hours for participating. Visit the Molly Rising website for more information on this competition, or go see Miss Poppy for a flyer.